Today on Isolation Nation, sharing saves lives. Actually, mental health sharing saves lives in our context. Take a look at this picture, which won't mean anything to you at this point. That's Kira, that's Abby, and that's Cameron. A little bit later in the show, it will mean a lot to you. Now, take a look at two other pictures. First of all, this picture here. I gotta say it, the cargo shorts are terrible. Sorry, I kind of lost my mind. And then this picture of a wedding party of which I am one. Those pictures essentially are kind of the end of the story for our purposes. But now let's go back to the beginning. October the 15th, 2009, off the record. We had about 100,000 people that watched every day. But today's story is about just one of those people.
I was in a lot of pain. I mean, I'd gone through a lot of days in a row of just pain. I didn't know there was anything actually wrong with me. I just thought that I'm just some screwed up guy. I turned on Off the Record, bawling my head off, pointing at the TV screen and nodding and just saying, that's me. You know, everything they're talking about in terms of their thoughts. It was like they both reached out of the TV screen and slapped me across the face. I wrote out an email to Mike saying that, you know, I thought it was really, really cool that him and Stefan shared something so personal. At that point, I felt it was too late for me. I had a belt rigged up to the clothes rod in my closet, and that was the way I had chosen to do it. On my computer, it always sent this loud ding, like when someone emailed me, and I heard that. So I went back to my computer, looked at the screen, and there was Mike's email address. It was basically Mike asking me, you know, why I felt it was too late, and asking me if I'd ever tried to get help for what I was going through, which I hadn't. After each one that I wrote to Mike, I would get up and walk to my room and get things a little more set up to finish the job. I got to the hallway and that ding went off. I said, this guy doesn't shut up even on email. After we were done messaging back and forth, what he said made sense to me, you know, and it's almost like I realized that, okay, yeah, I never did tell anyone up until that day what I was going through. I knew deep down there was a little flicker in there that didn't want to die. I can't go out, I can't end it without at least trying. 6 years later, I'm sitting here staring into this camera, telling my story. Sharing saves lives. It's that simple.
That is what today's Isolation Nation is all about. Remember this picture? Well, what it says to me is that sharing can create life. Sharing can bring joy. And sharing can... I gotta just say it. The cargo shorts, I don't care how important this story is. The cargo shorts are just wrong. Well, here he is. And fortunately for everyone across this planet Earth, the camera is now cropping you so we can't see what's underneath the camera. And if you get pissed off at me, Tyson, and you go, you know what, I want to pay that guy back, all you got to do is stand up and that would be payback. How are you, man?
Hey, thanks for having us, Michael. The shorts are on. You know I'm wearing them, and just being in your head sometimes is all I need.
Hi, Pam. How are you?
Good.
Good. So, well, first of all, why don't you introduce your baby to me, since I have never actually met your baby. I've heard about your baby. So a formal introduction, and the kid better respond, okay? So go ahead.
This is Miss Cameron.
And
Sorry? No.
she was born about 6 weeks ago?
May 12th.
Right. So we looked at that picture, which I found to be really quite emotional to look at it, of your three girls together, Tyson. Now your first daughter, Kira, was born. How old was she when that whole thing went down in 2009? How old was she?
She would have been about 6.
And now she is, I'm
now.
going to say she must be 17.
17, yeah.
Yeah. Look at the math here. Adding 11 to 6 and coming up with 17. You can't do that in Battleford, can you?
We can do that and a lot more.
So let's go back to that time when you were very close to taking your own life. And I think that what was going on in your head right now is probably one of the most important things that you can share for others. We talked about, or at least I did, about the value of sharing, the importance of sharing, that sharing saves lives. So it's kind of like, and I've used this analogy before, a game of tag. I was it. I tagged you. Now you have, because you've spoken about this, in Saskatchewan, you've given speeches to classes. You're kind of representing now it. So let's go back to what you were thinking at the time. You had this wonderful daughter, and how did you rationalize in your mind the idea that you could leave her and she'd be okay?
Well, I was exhausted. I mean, I had spent years wearing a mask, pretending to be happy, pretending to have it all together. And, a person does that for a lot of years and you become exhausted. And, there's the loneliness that came with it. My brain essentially telling me that, it wasn't about, or my decision to take my life wasn't about thinking or believing that nobody loved me. I knew people loved me. I knew people cared about me, but it was more like a voice just telling me that everyone will just be better off because I'm such a burden. I bring so much stress to people's lives, or, thoughts like that. And so that's kind of where the rationale for at that time came in. Was, like I said, it wasn't thinking no one loved me. I knew people did, but it was really believing that I was such a huge burden on everybody that, if I do this, yeah, they're going to be sad for a little bit, but eventually, even they're going to say, yeah, he made the right choice. And that's what depression was telling me.
Right. And now, all this time later, but shortly afterwards, even, did you start to realize, like how wrong that was? How in no scenario would your daughter feel like she was better off because her dad took his own life? Like, did you realize that, depression has this incredible power to convince us of things that clearly are not true?
Well, yeah, I mean, even with the decision I came to at that time of committing suicide or wanting to, for a lot of years, and I've heard other people say it over time as well, that even though they had the thought, they were never really that scared of it because they were too chicken shit to go through with it, and that's kind of how I was. Unfortunately, what happens is, you let it go on for so long that the need or the want for the pain to end is stronger than the fear of taking your own life. And that's kind of, where I ended up. After me and you talked for that first time in those string of emails, I bawled. I cried myself to sleep. I woke up the next morning, and my first thought when I woke up was, I made it through that day. Wow. And even knowing that I told somebody, even though it was somebody I'd never met before, and I I was honest with you, I told you how I felt and all that stuff, that felt better. I mean, certainly didn't cure me by any means, but it relieved. There was some relief from that pain.
So what did you do then? So here you are. This was, I mean, the show was October 15th, 2009. So you and I had our email exchange the next day. So it would have been October 16th, 2009. You wake up on the 17th and you go, wow, I survived the day. Wow, I've actually told someone a bit of my story. So what do you do then?
I coasted. I took that little bit of relief I felt for having told somebody, because like I said, you were the first human being I had ever told what I was going through. So I coasted on that little bit of relief. And I always, when I talk to people about it, I describe it like, with medication, where if you've got an infection or something, the doc gives you antibiotics, and you're supposed to take them for 10 days. And after 5 days, you're feeling better. So you stop taking them. And what happens? You're going to get sick again. And that's what happened to me. I mean, I had a pretty decent, 2-3 weeks, I think, where I coasted and I still wore that mask, but I didn't do anything else. I didn't, attempt to see a counselor or anything like that. And about 2 or 3 weeks later is when I ended up in the hospital.
And when you say you ended up in the hospital, what were the circumstances that got you to the hospital?
It was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and my brain just switched. It was make a phone call or die. And that's what it came down to. And I mean, at that time, we used phone books. We don't really have those anymore. But I remember looking at the front cover of the phone book where there's always emergency numbers and stuff. And I thought I'd see a suicide hotline or something. And there wasn't one, but there was a 24-hour sexual assault hotline. So I kind of figured the sexual assault people might know the suicide people. And I called, and a lady had answered, and I just, in my best, business sophisticated voice I could come up with, asked if she had a number for a suicide hotline. And then there was this pause, and she said, "Are you okay?" And as soon as she asked that, I turned into a blubbering mess. I highly doubt she understood anything I was trying to say. I don't remember what I was trying to say. And I believe what happened is she used another phone to call the police. And she kept talking to me until 4 cops showed up at my door.
Wow. I didn't know this part of the story. So 4 cops show up at your door, and then what happens? And I mean, there's a whole issue that we could discuss, the absurdity of cops having to show up in that situation, because cops imply that you've done something wrong. But I mean, that's the way we work. That's, when you call and you say you're suicidal, police officers show up. So what happened then?
And I was very, very fortunate, because I've heard a lot of people's stories over the years about some of the negative interactions they had with cops during a mental health crisis. For me, I was extremely fortunate. 4 cops showed up. They sat down with me. They talked to me, and they talked me into letting them take me to the hospital. I sat in the back of the one car. They didn't put me in cuffs or anything like that. I sat in the back of the one car, and on the way to the hospital, I can remember the one cop on his radio to their dispatch or whatever, saying that something along the lines of, we're taking him to the hospital or whatever. He seems like a really good guy, just having a tough go. And I remember, little things like that, but they mean a lot to me now when I think of them. And so we got to the hospital, and I mean, that's another story in itself, because I work, and at that time I was still working, because for the last 21 years I've worked at a psychiatric hospital as a care aide. And when I'm sitting in the waiting room 10 years ago, the psychiatrist on call walks in, and he's one of the head psychiatrists at my work. And so I just sunk again, because I figured, okay, so all this is going on, and now I got to find another job. But again, just the right people in my path said the right things, and he was no different, very compassionate, talked me into staying. And next thing I know, I'm, lying in a bed on the mental health ward at the hospital.
And I mean, this story is just, it's so compelling at one level, but also, for me, I'm looking at you and I'm saying, okay, we've probably seen each other 5 times, including at your wedding, where you could have told me don't wear a suit because everyone's going to be wearing their Saskatchewan Roughriders jerseys. But no, like a schmuck, I'm in my suit, and I hate wearing a suit. But you're one of the few guys I would wear a suit for, because
we
I
did
just
get you a jersey, though.
Sorry, say that again.
We did get you a jersey that night.
You did. My really what I was thinking was just how unbelievably happy I am that you're alive, and that you're alive, not because I did anything or anybody else did anything exceptional other than just share. And that's the point of this, that when somebody is drowning and you swim out to 200 meters off of shore, and you're not a good swimmer, and you drag them back, that's something, right? That's heroic. That's saying, okay, I may have saved a life, but I actually risked my own life. But this is like, if you got it inside you, talk about it, because you don't know just how powerful it's going to be. So you're leaving us hanging right now. You're in your hospital bed. Your psychiatrist that you first saw is actually somebody that you've worked with. How do you get from there to where you could say, okay, I'm being discharged, and where you could say, I'm actually living my life again?
Well, probably one of the biggest memories I have of being in the hospital was, I was in there for about a week or so. And at some point in there, I was standing outside having a smoke, and there was a guy standing beside me. And this guy is like, if you want to think of Mountain Man, it was this guy. This guy was, probably 6'4", 6'5". He was massive. His hands were bigger than my head. He had this huge beard, and we're sitting there puffing on our smokes, and he looks down at me and says, "So what are you in for?" So I almost shit my pants right away, trying to think of, what's the most violent, aggressive thing I can think of, so this guy doesn't beat the shit out of me. But I just kind of mustered, they say I have depression. And I'll never forget it. His hand on my shoulder, and he says, "Yeah, man, me too." And that was, I'm looking up at the biggest man I've ever seen in my life. And if you passed him on the street, you would just think, there's you know, the manliest man, the toughest son of a bitch out there. And for him to have said that, I mean, just that loneliness you feel with depression, that, you know, that bit where you feel like you're the only person, and for him to let me know that I wasn't the only person was huge.
You know, I just put my microphone on mute and I turned to Casey and I said, "This is just unbelievably strong and powerful." And she said, "You know, I've never heard this part of the story before," because believe me, she's heard the Tyson Williams story many. I think she could recite it off like the top of her head without any problem. But this is like a second part. It's like, you know, you read a book and you go, "Oh my God, that book was so," I couldn't put it down. It was so compelling and so emotional and so all of these things. And now you're telling us about, you know, volume 2 of the book. So you meet this mountain man, and very funny the way you told it also. Like, I'm trying to think of what can I tell this guy that, you know, will make him at least respect me physically so he won't beat me up. And you come up with, "I'm in here for depression." Like, not the most intimidating thing you could have come up with.
No, it wasn't, but I was shaking and I panicked. I don't do well under pressure sometimes.
So now take us. So, you know, you meet this guy, and then imagine after you've had your smoke, which is a different story for a different day and a different show and a different cause. But you go back to your room. So what got you out of this deep, dark hole?
Talking has been my medicine. When I got out of the hospital, I set myself up with a therapist. And for the first maybe year or two, the agency I went to, they worked on a sliding scale. So, you know, which was really beneficial because some days I just had to pay $10. Other days, if I didn't even have $10, I could still have my session. So there was probably 2 to 3 times a week where I'd go in and I'd, you know, spew my shit and it just, you know, walk out feeling better. And that was, you know, that's like I said, that's been my medicine. I don't always keep it up as often as I should, like with where we are now and stuff. But even now, like, even if I'm in a good place and I'm in a good mood and things are working well, and if I have an appointment with my therapist, you know, I'll think of reasons why I should cancel it, you know, because I'm doing good, because I'm doing well. And yet I don't cancel it, and I'll go in there and sit down and I'll say at the start of it, you know, it's going to be a short session today because I'm doing well and I don't really have anything to talk about. And then usually right after I say that, I look at my watch and it's been an hour that I've been in there blabbering the whole time. So, and then, like I said, I walk out of that building feeling even better.
Let me talk to Pam for a second. Put her on the line. Hi, Pam. When did you meet Tyson? This whole story kind of unfolded in 2009, in the late fall of 2009. When did you meet him?
We met in 2012.
Okay, so, you know, he was
A few years after. But.
Right. And when did he first tell you the story that he just told us, without necessarily the details, the point being that he was at one time, not that long ago, in 2012, that he was very close to ending his own life?
Well, that was in May that we met, and I think it was in the fall of the same year that he told me. There was an article coming out. So he didn't want me to read it without him actually having told me first. He didn't go into all of that.
What was your reaction?
No.
Why did you wait, Tyson? Why did you wait to tell her, you know, something that obviously was really significant in your life?
It was probably a few different issues. One is she's smoking hot. So, I mean, I was in a place where, you know, I'm bald, I'm chubby, I'm 10 years older than her. At the time we met, I was at the tail end of going through bankruptcy. So I figured if I throw depression on this pile, I've lost her.
That is just so. I mean, it's funny, but also so, you know, self-aware and a million other different things. Hey, when you just described that litany of things, I still think you're a pretty good catch. Okay, so you declared bankruptcy. I mean, and you know all the other things that you mentioned. So, Pam, what when he told you this? Did that change the way you saw him? And don't get me wrong, I know it didn't change, you know, obviously whether you loved him or not, or whether you thought he was a good guy or not. But did you worry, and do you still worry that he was in such a bad place once that he could go back there? And you've now had two wonderful children together. Does that weigh on you?
I think I'd be more worried about it if he wasn't talking about it. But the fact that he was willing to tell me about it kind of made it a little bit easier to come to terms with.
Okay, I've always wanted to ask you this question. You and I and Tyson met at Mike Babcock's fundraiser. Was it 6 years ago? I think it was probably during the summer.
Yeah, 2014, I believe.
Okay. So 2014, I say to you, Tyson, you know, I'm emceeing this charity thing in Saskatoon. I would love to meet you. And you said, nah, you know, I wouldn't know what to say. And I said, you don't have to say anything. Just come out and hang out with me. And you said, no. And then I said, well, come on. Like, when am I going to be in Saskatoon? And you're a huge hockey fan. And it's Mike Babcock. And he's going to have all of these hockey players with him. And it'll just be cool. We'll hang out together. And you said, no. And then I said to you, okay, well, I guess you had Abby at that point? Right.
Yeah.
So I've got it straight. So I said to you, well, because you weren't married at the time. I said, you know, the mother of your daughter, are you guys still together? And you said, yeah. I said, well, why don't you bring your girlfriend? And you said, done. So you come to this thing. I told you it was $1,000 a plate. I told you it was going to be a great night. And there you are. You show up in cargo shorts. Now, this question is not for you, Tyson. This is for you, Pam. When you were getting dressed, did you not look at him and think, okay, well, you know, I look really nice, meaning you. And you're looking at him going, okay, well, he's wearing cargo shorts. Did you not think, I should probably mention that?
There's no point. No different than having Bruins shoes for our wedding.
Oh, that's awesome. So I have to tell you that night turned out to be, you know, for me, of all the events that I've been to, first of all, it was a great event, but just the significance of being there with you guys was really amazing for me. And I introduced you, and you were pissed off at me because I embarrassed you because you had to stand up. And when you stood up, there was like this dead silence. And then all of a sudden, everyone starts to stand up and cheer. And I just thought, oh my gosh, how weird is life? Here I am on this stage in Saskatoon, you know, with my buddy Tyson and my new buddy Pam, and he's standing up, and all of these quote unquote celebrities are cheering for him. Like how many things had to happen for that to happen? But I'm glad it did. Okay, I think I kind of feel like I'm being a little bit rude to Sam Parker. Sam is on the line with us right now, or he has got his camera in his car. And there is Sam Parker. How are you, Sam?
Good. How are you?
Good. So, sorry to keep you waiting, but that story was just so compelling, and we'll all talk in a second. But so the show's about, you know, sharing saves lives. So I'm going to ask you a question that will make sense, but kind of weird why I'm going to say it. But why are you on the show?
I'm on the show because I reached out to you when I was a teenager going through a lot of stuff in high school. I had missed the bottom half of my grade 9 year because of my depression. I was in a really dark place, and somehow I got your number and we linked up. And, I'm still here.
You know, I mean, again, the story comes down to you had seen me sharing some time before, and important to acknowledge at this point. You know, you're not on the show, so I can say, "Hey, look what I did," because as I've said many times, you know, deflected, saying, you know, essentially, no big deal, right? This is the most natural, easy thing in the world. As a matter of fact, I've gotten back as much as I've given, and probably taken out more. So, what turned it around for you? And when you told me that night, when you got my cell phone number, and just randomly I decided to answer it, which I normally wouldn't do, because when you don't recognize the number, you know, that's just standard practice for we human beings now. Don't answer calls from numbers that you don't recognize. But had you spoken to others about this when you called me?
I spoke to my brother, and that's kind of when I started to find out about SickNotWeak and your work. And I forget how I got your number that night. It's kind of all a blur, but I remember I was in a really dark place, and had you not answered, I don't know if I'd still be around. I was having a lot of self-doubt going through high school about where I was going to end up in my life, and had no motivation, and I knew I needed help, and I knew I had to make a call to someone.
And what year was that? I happen to be, I mean, this is the weirdest story, this weirdest confluence of events. And I use that word just to show that I knew it. But here I was in Ottawa. And the next day I was going to give a speech at a breakfast in Parliament Hill put on by Aaron O'Toole. Aaron O'Toole, who's now running for the leadership of the PC party. And I mean, I love the guy, even though I'm not a PC guy. I love the guy, and I hope he wins. I think he's a good man. But I'm, you know, the night that I was in Ottawa was when you called. If I'm at home, there's no way my phone's even on. I wouldn't leave it on so it wouldn't disturb my wife. But I mentioned to him something about you, and he goes, "I know him." And you had actually been, you canvassed for him, right?
Yeah, Aaron's a good guy. I volunteered for him during I think it was the 2015. Yeah, when I called you, it would have been 2015, because that's when that was all happening. And then you emailed me the next day, or texted me, I forget, and said that you guys linked up, which was super cool.
Yeah, I mean, a crazy bunch of events that, you know, seemed to be unrelated, but there we were, you know, me and Aaron talking about Sam Parker, who 12 hours before I'd never heard your name. And since then, so for the last 5 years, I know you, you know, it's not like you got better and put it all behind you. You continue to have rough patches, correct?
Yeah. Well, when I contacted you, I was in Fort Perry. So that would have been right after, probably right in the middle of when I moved in there. And it was just a completely new scenario. And I find that I have like normal anxieties, as well as, like, you know how like you have a job interview, that's a normal anxiety. But then like there's the extra top on, like I overthink a lot. And I did not have many friends when I first went there, and ended up, because I'm a very social person, and ended up just being me on my own. And it was really rough, and I'm really glad I called you. But yeah, it hasn't been like when I moved from there to Saskatoon was the same scenario. I didn't really have the circle I have now. And I just didn't have as many supports. And I often find that brought into a new situation with depression, anxiety, like it's definitely magnifies it.
Have you always been as open as you are right now, you know, talking about it? You know, I don't know if casually is the right word, but, you know, just talking about it like, hey, this is my experience in my life, and this is what I've gone through. And, you know, was that more difficult for you a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I found that like being a guy, you often like something goes on, you want to swallow it and keep going. But like I found that when I'm sharing, like I still see a therapist now, but I've been on and off because, like Tyson said, when you start to feel good, you get a little cocky and you think that you're okay and you don't need it. And I've been on and off, and it's kind of a struggle just to recognize that, hey, I'm a guy, I can talk about my issues going on, and there's nothing to be ashamed about.
One of the things that we learn from our experiences in life is the impact that we can have. And I learned that I never knew, right? I suffered from anxiety since I was a kid, and severe depression at times from about 10 years before the show where I was interviewing Stefan Richer and that Tyson was watching. I had no idea that just talking would have an impact. But now I understand that it can save people's lives, which means that now the ball right now at this particular second is in your court. If somebody's watching who was in your position when you called me in Ottawa, what would you say to them?
I would say, like, go talk to someone. If you don't have anyone close to you, like, hey, I found you through my brother. I didn't even know how I found your number, but I called you, and for some reason that night was comfortable enough to tell you everything, not meeting you before. And when you're in that dark of a hole, it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to talk about what's going on.
Let's bring Tyson into the conversation. You met Tyson, right, when I was speaking in Saskatoon, probably a year and a half ago. You came to hear me speak, and Tyson came to hear me speak, and then you fought over me. You guys got into a fist fight, and Tyson proved that he could handle the big mountain man with a beard, and he kicked your ass, and that's the end of the story. Or the alternate ending would be, you go ahead. You guys should say hello to each other and tell the other person what their story, how it impacted on you. You can go first, Sam.
Your story really helped me not feel as ashamed to talk about my own stuff. Like, before hearing you and hearing Michael, I was very scared to talk about what was going on. I was afraid I'd be viewed as weak. But your story, it was really powerful, and even just watching you on SickNotWeak, you've been on a few times, it inspired me to keep going. So thank you.
Tyson, I know that you have spoken to Sam, so Sam's story is not as out there as your story is because you've been doing it longer. And but what do you think when you hear his story?
Well, hey Sam, that means a lot to hear you say that about my story. Your story does the same for me, even though you happen to be in your dark place, a few years after mine. For me, it's hearing people like yourself share that reminds me of where I came from, and I think that's important, to not ever forget about kind of, being in that place. And, especially for someone as young as Sam, to see young people speak up and share their story, I think is just extremely powerful. And there's so many young people who are struggling out there right now. And, I think when they look at a guy like Sam and sharing his story, and he's not whispering it, he's not embarrassed about it, he's not ashamed, and that sends a message to people, and it's like I said, it even sends a message to people in my spot where it's always important to know we're not alone, regardless if the person is 20 years younger than us or 20 years older than us. And, so to see Sam share his, like I said, unashamed, not embarrassed, that's really powerful.
Thank you, Tyson. It means a lot.
Obviously, I feel the same way that because I've made this point many times that when you get to the end of this whole conversation, what am I really? I'm a patient, right? And I struggle. 2 days ago I didn't do a show because I didn't feel good, and that was one of the first times I actually took the easy way out, because normally I just suck it up and do it, but I just said, I just was beating myself up about how, I was just going to be no good. And I was hearing this voice in my head telling me, how crappy I was and what's the point? Like, what are you doing for people? I mean, nobody really gives a shit about your story, Michael. And so I need to hear stories like your stories to feel empowered in my own life. So thank you to both you guys. Sam, would you ask, this is risky. Let's just take Tyson and Pam's box right now, Phil. And would you ask Tyson to stand up? Sam?
Sorry?
Would you ask Tyson to stand up?
Like, what do you mean?
Just repeat after me. Hey, Tyson, stand up.
Tyson, stand up. Oh, you want to? Oh,
Yeah.
I know what you're doing now.
Yeah. You see, I didn't want to be the guy, the creepy guy who asked him to stand up. So I served you up to be the creepy guy who asked him to stand up. Now, what's with the shirt, the tie, and the shorts, Tyson?
The shirt and the tie are to bring some class to this joint. And the shorts were just because I know you can't stand them.
The funny thing is, I'm so ashamed of this, but actually it wasn't, I was for the Open today, I was going to wear cargo shorts, right? Because like every man, I have cargo shorts, or I had them, but my wife threw them all out. Pam, if you're listening, which I know you are, maybe you should consider it. But she threw out the cargo shorts. So all those times when I was bad-mouthing you about your cargo shorts, I actually had cargo shorts, but the difference is I didn't wear them to $1,000 a night dinners, and actually I seldom wore them out of the house. But it's a good look. It's working for you.
I will point out that event in Saskatoon, that $1,000 a plate, the invitation to that event said the dress was prairie chic. Now, anyone who wants to Google what prairie chic means will know that the cargo shorts fit in perfectly.
Yeah, Pam agrees with you. She's going, no. That's pretty funny. Hold on, guys. Let's Phil. Let's roll the song from Sean Cullen talking about the whole idea that sharing saves lives. This is the Isolation Nation theme for today. Roll it, Phil.
It's a nation in isolation. It's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. Don't let sadness make an infiltration. You're all alone, think it's the end. It really isn't. Just call a friend. Somebody's there, someone who cares. You can do it, just try to share, yeah. It's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. Make every day a day of celebration, yeah.
Sorry, I was muted by me. Why can't I remember to go off mute? I don't understand. Maybe it's just karma. Maybe it's the world going, shut up. But I'm not going to shut up because of Tyson and Sam, because, this annoying sort of smartass, sometimes apparently seeming pretty cocky, sometimes that voice can make a difference. And I'm just telling the two of you, more Sam than you, because you are in the community. You have given speeches. And I just think that is, like, for me, it's like, wow, how amazing is that? That Tyson, a guy who was in a really bad place. But even beyond that, I don't think in your wildest dreams you ever dreamed dream that you would actually get to a school and speak in front of the school, that you would be on, on CTV in Saskatoon and you'd be talking about mental illness? I mean, am I right that that's like way past where you thought you would ever be?
Not in a million years. And it came right up to being at that point of standing there looking at the students and still wondering, how the fuck did I end up here?
Well, you told the story of how you did, and that's amazing. And Sam, let me ask you, Tyson and Pam, are you shocked at Sam's beard and his hair? Look, that is an awesome do, man. Like, seriously, since I saw you a year and a half ago, all of a sudden you hit puberty for sure. I mean, I thought you were 11 years old, but apparently not. That's a hell of a beard, and that is really good hair, man. And congrats on all of that.
Thank you. It's the quarantine beard.
It's working for you. Thanks, guys. To all of you. God, you throw out this word. Should I say it? Should I not say it? I feel this kinship with the three of you, but in particular, the two that have suffered in many of the same ways that I've suffered or battled. So I would say, now listen to the last word here. This is key. I'm not saying I love you. I'm saying love ya. There's a difference, okay? Sam, love you, man.
Love you too. Thanks for all you do, and for everything you continue to do for all of us.
Tyson, love you, man.
Love you too, buddy.
No, you said you. You ruined the whole thing, and Sam said it too. Now it's just getting uncomfortable and awkward. Pam, you have a good man, and you are. You're all very special, and as we Jewish people in Toronto say, mazel tov on your baby and on your two other wonderful girls, and just thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Tyson. All right, Sam. We're done. Thank you for your time today. The lesson is you never know when you speak who's listening. And you never know if you tell your story, just what kind of impact it has. And you never know whether or not this really crappy thing in your life, which it would be your mental illness, is actually going to be absolutely the best thing in your life at that time. Because, how many people can say just telling my story made a difference in someone's life? So if you feel like you can, tell your story. And if you need to hear this story, that's what we're here for, SickNotWeak. And that's why we'll be back here on Isolation Nation tomorrow when, once again, we try to prove the value of talking about mental health goes way beyond just the words you say. We'll see you tomorrow.